The Gospel of the Infancy of Jesus by Caiaphas, high priest, who was the high priest Caiaphas at the time of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Chapter 4. Now Herod perceived that the wise men did delay and not return to him, called together the priests and wise men, and said, "Tell me in what place the Christ should be born." And when they replied, "In Bethlehem, a city of Judea," he began to contrive in his own mind the death of the Lord Jesus Christ. But an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in his sleep and said, "Arise, take the child and his mother, and go into Egypt as soon as the cock crows." So he arose and went. And as he was considering with himself about his journey, the morning came upon him. In the length of the journey the girths of the saddle broke, and now he drew near to a great city in which there was an idol, to which the other idols and gods of Egypt brought their offerings and vows. And there was by this idol a priest ministering to it, who, as often as Satan spoke out of that idol, related the things he said to the inhabitants of Egypt and those countries. This priest had a son, 3 years old, who was possessed with a great multitude of devils, who uttered many strange things, and when the devils seized him, walked about naked with his clothes torn, throwing stones at those whom he saw. Near to that idol was the inn of the city, into which when Joseph and St. Mary came and had turned into that inn, all the inhabitants of the city were astonished. All the magistrates and priests of the idols assembled before that idol, and made inquiry there, saying, "What means all this consternation and dread which has fallen upon our country?" The idol answered them, "The unknown God is come here, who is truly God, nor is there anyone besides him who is worthy of divine worship, for he is truly the Son of God. At the fame of him this country trembled, and at his coming it is under the present commotion and consternation, and we ourselves are affrighted by the greatness of his power." And at the same instant this idol fell down, and at his fall all the inhabitants of Egypt, beside others, ran together. But the son of the priest, when his usual disorder came upon him, went into the inn, and there found Joseph and St. Mary, whom all the rest had left behind and forsook. And when the Lady St. Mary had washed the swaddling clothes of the Lord Christ, and had hanged them out to dry upon a post, the boy possessed with the devil took down one of them and put it upon his head. And presently the devils began to come out of his mouth, and fly away in the shape of crows and serpents. From that time the boy was healed by the power of the Lord, and he began to sing praises and give thanks to the Lord, who had healed him. When his father saw him restored to his former healthy state, he said, "My son, what has happened to you? By what means were you cured?" The son answered, "When the devil seized me, I went up into the inn, and there found a very handsome woman with a boy, whose swaddling clothes she just before had washed and hanged upon a post. I took one of these and put it upon my head, and immediately the devils left me and fled away." At this the father exceedingly rejoiced and said, "My son, perhaps this boy is the Son of the living God, who made the heavens and the earth. For as soon as he came upon us, the idol was broken, and all the gods fell down and were destroyed by a greater power. Then was fulfilled the prophecy which said, 'Out of Egypt I have called my son.'" Chapter 5. When Joseph and Mary heard that the idol was fallen down and destroyed, they were seized with fear and trembling, and said, "When we were in the land of Egypt, Herod, intending to kill Jesus, slew for that purpose all the infants at Bethlehem and that neighborhood. And there is no doubt that the Egyptians, if they come to hear that this idol is broken and fallen down, will burn us with fire." They went away therefore to a secret place of robbers, who robbed travelers as they passed by of their carriages and their clothes, and carried them away bound. These thieves upon their coming heard a great noise, such as the noise of a king with a great army and many horses, and the trumpets sounding at his departure from his own city, at which they were so affrighted as to leave all their booty behind them and fly away in haste. Upon this the prisoners arose and loosed each other's bonds, and taking each man his bags, they went away, and saw Joseph and Mary coming towards them. They inquired, Where is that king, the noise of whose approach the robbers heard and left us, so that we may now safely away?" Joseph answered, "He will come after us." Chapter 6. Then they went into another city, where there was a woman possessed with a devil, and in whom Satan, that cursed rebel, had taken up his abode. One night when she went to fetch water, she could neither endure her clothes on, nor to be in any house, but as often as they tied her with chains or cords, she broke them and went into desert places, and sometimes standing where roads crossed, and in the churchyards would throw stones at men. When St. Mary saw this woman, she pitied her, whereupon Satan presently left her and fled away in the form of the young man, saying, "Woe to me because of you, Mary, and your son." So the woman was delivered from her torment, but considering herself naked, she blushed and avoided seeing any man, and after putting on her clothes, she went home and gave an account of her case to her father and relations, who, as they were the best of the city, entertained St. Mary and Joseph with the greatest respect. The next morning, after having received a sufficient supply of provisions for the road, they went from them, and about the evening of the day arrived at another town, where a marriage was then about to be solemnized. But by the arts of Satan and the practices of some sorcerers, the bride was become so mute that she could not so much as open her mouth. But when this mute bride saw the Lady St. Mary entering into town, and carrying the Lord Christ in her arms, she stretched out her hands to the Lord Christ and took him in her arms, and closely hugging him, very often kissing him, continuously moving him and pressing him to her body. Straightway the string of her tongue was loosed, and her ears were opened, and she began to sing praises to God, who had restored her. So there was great joy among the inhabitants of the town that night, who thought that God and his angels were come down among them. In this place they abode 3 days, meeted with the greatest respect and most splendid entertainment. And being then furnished by people with provisions for the road, they departed and went into another city, in which they were inclined to lodge, because it was a famous place. There was in the city a gentlewoman who, as she went down one day to the river to bathe, behold, cursed Satan leaped upon her in the form of a serpent, and folded himself about her belly, and every night lay upon her. This woman, seeing the Lady St. Mary and the Lord infant in her bosom, asked the Lady St. Mary that she would give her the child to kiss and carry in her arms. When she had consented, and as soon as the woman had moved the child, Satan left her and fled away, nor did the woman ever afterward see him. Hereupon all the neighbors praised the supreme God, and the woman rewarded them with ample beneficence. On the morrow the same woman brought perfumed water to wash the Lord Jesus, and when she had washed him, she preserved the water. And there was a girl there whose body was white with leprosy, who, being sprinkled with this water and washed, was instantly cleansed from her leprosy. The people therefore said, "Without doubt Joseph and Mary and that boy are gods, for they do not look like mortals." And when they were making ready to go away, the girl who had been troubled with leprosy came and desired that they would permit her to go along with them. So they consented, and the girl went with them till they came to a city in which was the palace of a great king, and whose house was not far from the inn. Here they stayed, and when the girl went one day to the prince's wife, and found her in a sorrowful and mournful condition, she asked her the reason of her tears. She replied, "Wonder not at my groans, for I am under a great misfortune, of which I dare not tell anyone. But," said the girl, "if you will entrust me with your private grievance, perhaps I may find you a remedy for it." "You, therefore," says the prince's wife, "will keep the secret, and not discover it to any living person. I have been married to this prince, who rules the king as king over large dominions, and lived long with him before he had any child by me. At length I conceived by him, but alas, I brought forth a leprous son, which when he saw he would not own to be his, but said to me, 'Either do you kill him, or send him to some nurse in such a place that he may never be heard of, and now take care of yourself, I will never see you more.' So here I pine, lamenting my wretched and miserable circumstances. Alas, my son! Alas, my husband! Have I disclosed it to you?" The girl replied, "I have found a remedy for your disease, which I promise you, for as I also was leprous, but God has cleansed me, even he who is called Jesus, the son of the Lady Mary." The woman inquired where that God was whom she spake of. The girl answered, "He lodges with you here in the same house."